Hey there, comic book fans. It's Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and here we are for another episode from the Baltimore Comic Con this year. This is actually episode 3, and just like we did in episode 2, where we got books signed by a couple of comic book legends, this episode, we're getting another comic book legend to sign a lot of comics for me, and this time it's Chris Claremont. Now, Chris is someone that I saw and got a lot of books signed from down at Heroes Con this year. And it was just like it was down there. I rushed in, tried to get to the front of the line as quickly as I could and get some books signed. I mean, I had a lot of books down there, and I had a lot of books this time as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a little video montage of me going in on day 2. This would have been Saturday, the big day at the Baltimore Comic Con. You're going to see me going in, my experience during that, and then you're going to see me getting in line and getting to go up to see Chris. What you won't see, though, is some interaction with Chris this time because they asked me not to film when I was up there with him. So that's cool, no big deal. So sit back, enjoy the video montage. I'll come back, and then we'll do a show and tell.
I was like, it's fine, it's attached to my hip, and then no, the zipper's oh my god. Sorry, I'm doing 25 things at once.
Hang on, everybody pause. Take a breath.
Okay.
Take 3 breaths.
Okay.
Now be serious.
Yeah.
Sit. Relax.
It'll be okay.
It will be okay.
Yeah.
They are all at your mercy.
Yeah.
Oh no, I will. She just gets to say, this is the, it's his fault. No, but seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because you're dressed like me doesn't mean you No, jean shirt.
As you said, the glasses, the whole thing,
right?
That's what I usually wear.
Okay.
Because I'm a writer and nobody looks at me, and all I have to do is walk the dog. I mean, there was a theory I could write, but I have to walk the dog.
One eternity later.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed some of that video. It wasn't a lot, but it did give you a little bit of that experience, what it was like being part of that VIP line. I got the VIP pass so I could get in there as quickly as possible. And as you saw, when I rushed in on day 2 here at Baltimore, I rushed in and I went right to Chris's line, and I was only a few people deep at that point. I think they had a couple dealers that were already there, sitting there waiting. And one of the things I like about Chris Claremont is he gets there fairly early. He doesn't waste time. He's not out there socializing as much, or at least he's socializing before he gets there. And he gets there and he starts signing. He is a machine, and they are making money big time with all the signings. I mean, he has a big line all the time. So I don't fault him for this. I'm just saying he's very popular, and you need to get in that line pretty quick or you're going to be there for a while, because he loves to talk and it will make the line very long. And then you've got people like me who actually had a ton of stuff, and I'll talk about that a little bit towards the end after we go through some of the show and tell, because you'll realize I have a lot of stuff to go through here. So let's just get into it. Now, one thing I want to do when we go through these books, I'm not going to go through and talk about the value of the book once it gets signed. I just want you guys to know that in most cases, most of these books I'm going to look at with the idea of sending it in to CGC to have JSA verify it. And in a lot of cases, I'm going to be looking to send it into another signing with some of the other creators from those books. And you'll recognize those books instantly, and we'll talk about those creators as well. So definitely in a lot of cases, I'm going to be holding on to these books for a while. I'll probably prep them, maybe do some work on them, maybe not. Maybe I'll just hold on to them and we'll wait for them to go to another signing at some point. I'll probably have to have a facilitator for a lot of these to be determined. So after I get them back and I clean and press them, we'll get them in the CGC. We'll do a video on that, and I'll talk about those books specifically at the time about the value that I'm adding to them by adding signatures to these books. And that isn't always the case. Adding signatures isn't always a sure way to make a book more valuable, but in a case with Chris Claremont, it pretty much is. It's a formula that I've really liked to work with Chris, because his signature on any of his X-Men books, Wolverine books, and some other things really does add a lot of value to it. So, well, you actually start with really good books to begin with. So they have a lot of value to begin with, but adding that Chris signature, that's my point, adds even more value. And it helps if it doesn't grade out quite as high as you think too. So it does kind of insulate it from dropping down too much. Anyway, point is, that's all I'm going to talk about with the comic book values today. We're just going to go through these books and hope you like them. Most of these, in most cases, are going to be definitely gradable with some defects. And I'll talk about one in particular here in a few minutes that definitely has a defect, and I'll speak a little bit about that too. So let's talk about two books that I got signed by Chris. Actually, this wasn't done on day 2. It was done on day 3. And you've already seen it if you've watched episode 1, the comic book haul video, where I actually got these books. But I'm going to show them to you again because this is the Chris Claremont episode. So on day 3, I was looking at comics and I picked up some things. And when I found this book right here, X-Men 155, it was already signed by Dave Cochran right up here in the trade dress. And it is a super nice book. It only has one small little defect down here at the bottom. There's a little piece missing. It's a micro piece. I think it's going to grade out really good. I don't think it'll hit a 9.8. Maybe if I get a gift grade, I don't know. But I knew that as soon as I saw this, I was going to get it, especially after looking at the grade or seeing the grade, the condition. I was going to go and run back over on Sunday, and it was about 2 o'clock. 2:30, maybe 3 o'clock by the time I finished getting up there to get Chris to sign. But Chris signed this right over there. So I got Chris and Dave on this book right there. Not a key, but it was cool to find a Dave Cochran autograph. And then the other one, I picked it up immediately after I picked up the 155. I knew I was going to go back to get this book from Heroes Aren't Hard to Find. They had this beautiful copy of Wolverine number 1, the limited series. And this is a case where this is the first of a lot of books you're going to find here that I'm going to save for a future signing to at least get Frank Miller on at some point. I hope it will be sooner than later because I know he's not getting any younger, but then again, neither am I. So those books you'd already seen. So those were the ones that he did on Sunday. But everything else here, Chris signed on Saturday morning. And the way I did it, because I had a bunch of items here, they asked me, well, I talked with the handler who was somebody different than they had down in HeroesCon. At HeroesCon, it was his son. Now, I don't know if the young lady that was there was related to them or not. It's quite possible that she was. But Grace, I believe her name was very accommodating. And I said, hey, I've got this many items. And I said, how do you want to handle this? Because the worst thing I wanted is to say, well, you have to get back in line. That would end this whole venture right here. I would just pick out what I wanted and get it done. But just like HeroesCon, what she asked me to do was break it down. In this case, we broke it in half. And what we did was we went through the line. I got half of them signed, and then I immediately went to the back of the little line that was at the table itself, not in the main line where everybody was lining up. She literally just pulled me back around, and the 4 or 5 people that were standing around that corner of the table, she just put me in the back of the line, and then we did it again. And I know I had daggers in the back of my back right here. It was, I could feel it, but trust me, I'm not the only one who does this. There's people I've seen down at HeroesCon, a guy did a complete short box at one time, and what he did was he broke it down into small little batches of about 20, 25 each, and then 5 or 6 people would go, and then he would go back and get the next set of books. And that's how they handle when you've got a lot of books like that. And I appreciate that, and I hope people behind us appreciate that, because at least you get through. You don't have to wait for the whole thing to get signed. Anyway, let's get to the show and tell. So I did have another Wolverine #1. This is a newsstand. This is a really nice copy, except for one thing. And I had picked it up from an online auction from my LCS a couple years ago. And it's the one book that made me stop doing their auctions, because they only provided one photo. And it kind of taught me a lesson that if I don't have the photos, I don't have all the information, I really shouldn't be buying that book, because there wasn't any avenue to really look at the book any better than just looking at a photo still in the bag laying on the table. You couldn't see the back. You couldn't see any details. The photos weren't that high res. And I spent way too much money. Now, this was a couple years ago. I'm looking at the date. Actually, bought this in 2022. So we're at the... I'm looking at the date. It's June 2022. So we're coming down from the bubble at that point. So prices are really high. And for what I paid for this book is what I would pay these days for a super high grade. This was really nice, except it has a little tear right down here. And that was very disappointing. And this was the beginning of me starting to really question some of the online auctions where I didn't have enough information. It would take me a lot longer to weed off of whatnot for the same reasons. You just don't have enough information that you can go back and really look at something. And that's one of the reasons I stopped with buying stuff from my LCS, going through their auctions. Now, I'll go to the LCS and buy it. I can see the book. But these online auctions, I stopped completely after this book. But this may still grade out pretty good. We'll see. Being a newsstand, again, this is another book that I'll save for a Frank Miller signing. All right, let's move over to Wolverine #1. And I actually had 2 copies of this. And it's a little hard to see Chris's signature. He actually signed in a purple paint pen. Let me see if I can go forward there. I mean, it's really hard to see. He was pretty good with what he signed with for the most part. And in some cases, like this one, it wasn't the best choice. It's a perfectly fine signature. It just doesn't pop off of there. A white, a pink, even a green would have really, a yellow might have really looked good too. But nonetheless, it's still, on both of these, it's still a very nice signature. Not my favorite, but you can't go wrong with a #1 here as well, especially when it's super high grade. Now, one of these is from an older... There's a few defects on this copy that I may just keep this as a raw at this point. This one's the one that may get graded. Probably will get graded. Now, continuing with Wolverine, I did have a really nice copy of Wolverine #10. This is the Bill Sienkiewicz artwork from the kind of part of the origin of Wolverine and Sabretooth. And it's not a super big key, but it's still, to me, it was always the #3 book out of those first 10 that were really valuable. Issue #1, issue #8 with the Gray Hulk, and then you had this one right here. And I always liked this one. And this one, if I'm not mistaken, I picked up down in... No, I take it back. I thought that I would pick this up down in Virginia Beach a couple years ago. This is actually a Whatnot purchase. So this was a pretty nice book. Yeah, I only spent $10 on it, so can't complain about that. All right, so that was it for Wolverine. But then I move over to the X-Men books, and I got a lot of X-Men books. Let's just bang through this. I'll just go through this, and I'll stop fiddling around with the talk. We got the collector's edition of the new X-Men series with Jim Lee. Got a couple. This is the gatefold cover, and you can see he signed up here in the trade dress. And then I had one more left over from the regular cover. That's just like the collector's cover right there, Cyclops and Wolverine. That was always my favorite cover. But the super popular one is the Magneto cover. And I ended up getting a couple of these signed. Now, I do have both of those copies right there, both of the Magneto, that one, and the regular Cyclops Wolverine. I do have both of those already signed by Claremont and Jim Lee, and maybe even Scott Williams too, but I think I actually had to send them in the CBCS because at the time, CGC wasn't working with JSA, so I couldn't get it through them. I had to go through CBCS to verify it because they work with Beckett, or they are Beckett actually. So this is a case where I will save these and actually the rest of this right here for a Jim Lee signing. Actually, there's going to be a lot of Jim Lee books that are going to get saved here. But I finally, it's the first time I'd ever gotten the Psylocke Rogue Cyclops cover right there. I got a couple of those. And the first time I've gotten the Storm and Beast covers as well. And I got several of those. I went and bought a lot of these back in the day when the book came out. Just like everybody, that's one of the biggest selling books of all time. And that's part of the reason is people like me, I was buying 5, 6, 7 of every one of these. And I've gotten a bunch of these signed over the years, although I'd never gotten the lesser covers, the Storm cover, the Storm cover and the Rogue and Cyclops cover. I'd never gotten those signed before, but there's actually some surprising value in getting that with the signatures as well. So again, all of these were done with the intent of possibly getting them signed by Jim Lee and then sending them in the CGC. So we'll see. There's definitely some other books in here with Jim Lee, like I was saying. Anyway, we go over to the regular X-Men. We've got issue 102. This was a very nice copy. I didn't spend a lot of money on that, but that should be pretty good. I don't think it's a 9.8, but it should still grade out pretty good. Just like this 105. That's a beautiful Jean Grey cover there as Phoenix, but still Dave Cochran at the time. And then I've got a very nice Raw 108, the first John Byrne. And then we've got 114. I always like this because you can see the height of Wolverine. That kind of puts it in perspective. He's supposed to be very short. Like a Wolverine is not supposed to be very tall, like you get in the MCU where he's as tall as Cyclops. And then we've got this great Sauron cover right there, 115. Now, all of these will be cleaned and pressed. I'm not obviously waiting to have John Byrne do a signing because I don't think that'll ever happen. But we've got 120 right here, and this is a book when I bought this, I thought it was a little bit higher grade than it was. I kind of got the signature on there because the intent on this one is going to be definitely go ahead and get it graded, whatever it grades out. This is a book that will be for sale at some point because I know it won't hit that 9.6, and a 9.6 is what I want for the PC, at the very least. As is this book. This is 129, and I don't think this one, I don't think this is going to hit a 9.6 either. And again, these are the two books that I actually need to complete my 9.6 run of the graded X-Men John Byrne run, 108 to 143. And these are the two that I need. And whether it's signed or not doesn't make any difference to me, but I don't think either one of these are going to hit that 9.6. And one of the things I talk about all the time is adding a signature to a book to, if it doesn't grade out as quite as high, at least the signature of Chris Claremont adds value to the book, and it will help it will help so it won't drop down so much when you get a lower grade. I'll put it that way. All right, we've got a very nice copy of 134, the first appearance of Dark Phoenix. We've got a nice 139, the first time that Kitty Pryde joins the X-Men and on the cover. And then we've got issue 143, the very last John Byrne right there. And then we move up to 166, the first time I've ever gotten this signed. This is the first appearance of Lockheed, the dragon that's always with Kitty there. Paul Smith artwork. And then we've got the great Barry Windsor Smith on issue number 205. And I couldn't resist getting another one of these, issue number 213, this classic Alan Davis Alan Davis cover right here with Wolverine and Sabretooth. And as you can see, I actually got Alan Davis while I was in Baltimore as well. So I got both of them on this. This was a project piece from 2 years ago at HeroesCon when I finally was able to get a 9/8 on this particular issue. And that was a struggle because the back is very dark. And every time I would buy this book or try to buy this book, the back would always have spine ticks. And I don't know what it was. The front could be beautiful. The spine could be beautiful. But the back was awful. And I finally managed to get a 9.8. I had sent it into a Chris Claremont CGC signing. And then I took it to HeroesCon when I got back at 9.8. And that's on a video from a couple years ago at this point. I took it down to HeroesCon. Alan Davis was going to be there. And it was the first time I'd taken a signed graded book to a con and had them crack it out. And in fact, it was the first time I'd ever cracked out a CGC slab. So I had to have CGC do that. I had to take the witness then over to the table and then get that signed. And it turned into a whole weekend of trying to get that opportunity to finally get over to Alan Davis's table. But I managed to do it, and I managed to keep my 9.8. So I'm doing it again, except this time I'm just going to have JSA verify the signatures when I send this in. All right, we got issue, should have had that one behind a few, but I had issue 191. This is a key, but I can't remember exactly what, but it is, you got some John Romita Jr. artwork here. Now this is a key, First Mr. Sinister, issue number 221. This is a book that I would go ahead and get it graded even without Mark Silvestri, but I may save it and see if he shows up at MegaCon or maybe later next year when he may end up going back to Terrific Con. I know he was there this year. That might be something. I may send that in and have a facilitator take care of that. As well as his classic 234. I got a couple of these. The Wolverine. It was the first of these two purple covers. And these are both very nice copies. And it's tough because it's all black on the spine there. Then we've got the first, I believe it's the first Madeline Pryor on the cover. And here's the other purple cover, 251. Of course, we saw this in the Deadpool Wolverine movie as well. Good stuff there. Definitely save several of those, maybe, like I said, for a Silvestri signing at some point. And then one of my all-time favorites, probably my favorite Jim Lee book itself, not for the cover. Cover doesn't do anything for me, but I love the story of how they reinvented Psylocke. That was pretty awesome. I enjoyed the three-issue story that brought her into the X-Men as the current version of Psylocke that we all know at this point. So this was the beginning of that right there. And then again, this is a Jim Lee book that will have to get saved, as well as probably the biggest Jim Lee book besides the new run of X-Men was this here, and 2 copies of 268. This is probably the most favorite Jim Lee Chris Claremont book there is right here. And I got a couple really good copies on this. And now this is a book I do have signed 9.8 in the PC. That is signed by all 3 of the creators. You got Claremont, you got Lee, and you've got Scott Williams. And that was at signings and through Claremont down to HeroesCon. Then I sent it into the Jim Lee signing, or I had one of the facilitators take it to the signing. So good stuff there. So like I said, a lot of great books we got signed, and I'm looking here. I was going to say I've got one more book that he signed, and I finally had a really nice copy of the X-Men graphic novel, God Loves, Man Kills. And this is the one that I really didn't like, and you can see his signature right there. He had a gold Sharpie, and it was poo-poo platter. He took a shit on my book right here. Everything else looked really good, but this one was awful. I don't know what it is. I've had 2 graphic novels this year that got signed. The other one was Batman, Son of the Demon, that Jerry Bingham signed, and he took a crap on that book as well. I don't know what it is. I didn't react quick enough although after he signed it in that gold pen, I was trying to joke about it a little bit with Chris. I basically said, "Oh, I think it's time to retire that pen," because I didn't want him to touch another one of my books with that gold pen. It was awful. And he took the hint. I don't know if he took offense from it or not, but he took the hint and signed everything else with a Sharpie, and then with some other things here I'm going to show you with a paint pen, actually. But everything else looked really good. This was the one that was really crappy, though. That kind of disappointed me. I may have to try that as another project piece if I ever pick up graphic novel up again. Anyway, what did I say? I've got one more thing that Chris signed, or actually, nah, what do I got? 8 more things that he signed, but they're not comic books. And it's the first time I've ever taken this many to a show before. And I would have dumped them back in the car because, as I said, Chris was the first person that signed for me, and my intent was get Chris to sign everything. I did have a couple other quick signings that I had books with me, but I wanted to get rid of these items that are sitting right here, take them back to the car so I didn't have to lug them around all day. Well, what happened was the Baltimore Marathon was going on Saturday, and when I finally got a chance to go back to the car, it was about 1:30 in the afternoon at this point, and the marathon was cutting right in front of the convention center. I would have had to cross through the marathon itself to get to my parking garage. And I'm going, I can't do this. I don't know what the etiquette is, but I felt bad, and I just turned around and kept them with me all day. Anyway, let me show you what I picked up. And I'm talking about Funkos. I got lots of Funkos signed by Chris Claremont. So, starting up, we've got, let me see if I can do this without, it's a little hard to see. I've got them in the protective cases, but I've got Dark Phoenix and Phoenix. Sorry, my presentation here sucks, guys. We've got Kitty Pryde with Lockheed there. We have Magic. Let me see if I can show it. It's a little hard. I should have taken them out of the protective cases. They are little. These cases are a little. Makes it a little blurry, but they do protect those paint pens that he used on there. And then Psylocke, we were just talking about her. So there you go. And he ended up just using a red paint pen. I think it would have been better if he had switched it up a little bit. I know that somebody like a Kari, is that how you say it? Carrie or Kari Andrews switched up, and he used a lot of different paint pens, and they all look great. But Chris just did a red pen. Here we've got the Goblin Queen. This is one of the Funkos from the X-Men 97 animated series. And then lastly, we have Rogue. Here's Rogue, the regular one right here. And then lastly, we've got Rogue from the X-Men 97 animated series. And I didn't think about it at the time until I just realized this right here. The voice actress for Rogue, and several of the other actors there too, but the actress for Rogue was there at Baltimore Comic-Con. There was at least 4, maybe 5 of the voice actors, and their appearance, they were not cheap. And I couldn't justify getting signatures from them for doing characters that I'm not only paying Chris Claremont $15 a piece for these, they're getting paid a lot more, and they never contributed to these characters the way Chris did. And I felt bad about that, but I just couldn't justify the price. I had some of the comic books that have come out over the last year that have got the animated characters covers on there, and I specifically wanted the one from the Rogue actress. But from what I understand is that she was charging even more for one of the variant covers with her on there, or the Rogue character on there. And I'm going, that's kind of crazy. But as I said, this is the one I probably should have taken it, because this is her character from the X-Men 97 there. Whoops, sorry about that. You see the light. So nonetheless, I wasn't going to pay for that anyway at that point. But guys, that is it for the 3rd episode here. Legendary comic book creators. I've got some more coming up, and I've got some that I'm not going to necessarily classify as legendary, but there's some great signings coming up. And After this, we're probably going to do ones where I'm going to group them into small groups, and I'm going to have some themes going on. I do want to talk about some of the prices I got charged, and I'm going to pair a couple of those artists up together, because I will say that some of the prices were a little outrageous. And I'm going to put some of those artists together, and we'll talk about them all in one thing. Whether it was justified or not, I don't know. But we'll talk about that in a future episode. I don't know how many more of these we're going to do. Like I said, I've got a bunch more books to get signed. Nothing like what I did down at Heroes Con. So we'll probably have I would say at least 2 to 4 more episodes at this point. So I hope you guys will join me for the next episode. And definitely leave me a comment in the comment section below. Let me know if you went to the Baltimore Comic Con. Let me know if you got Chris Claremont to sign anything. I'd love to know that. So if you enjoyed today's episode, definitely give me a like, slap the subscribe, and click on that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the episodes that I put out each and every week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. All right, guys, I am out of here. I'll see you for the next episode. Until then, remember, every comic has a story.